All right, so now we're on the Children's Crusade. As you guys can see, the Crusades are kind of just this big, massive holy war where the Muslims are fighting Christians, and it's kind of a mess. The Children's Crusade was one of the People's Crusades. So this was when these weren't really endorsed by the Pope, but people felt compelled to try it out and go for it. The Children's Crusade began after thousands of poor people, including boys and girls from ages 10 to 18, became convinced they could recover Jerusalem. They believed God would deliver them because they were poor and faithful, so this would work. Children from France formed one part of the group, and children from Germany for the other. They expected God to part the waters of the Mediterranean Sea so they could cross safely to Jerusalem. None of these kids hit the Holy Land. Many starved or froze to death during the march. When the expected miracle did not occur, some of the youngsters who survived the terrible journey got aboard ships going to the east. These children either were drowned at storms in sea or sold into slavery. So the Children's Crusade had a very terrible ending to it. Other crusades continued in the 1200s. In the Fifth Crusade, from 1217 to 1229, the Christians continued the strategy of concentrating their efforts on Egypt, so they're not even really considering the Holy Land right now, which they continued to be key for winning Palestine. They captured the port of Damietta, but soon had to give it up because of a truce. The Emperor Frederick II of the Holy Roman Empire negotiated a peace with the Muslim Sultan, who then gave Jerusalem to the Christians. Jerusalem remained Christian until the Muslims seized it again in 1244. The fall of Jerusalem caused King Louis IX of France, St. Louis, to lead a crusade from 1248 to 1254. Like earlier crusaders, he also tried to win the Holy Land by attacking Egypt. But his expedition became disorganized, and the Muslims captured Louis and most of his army. The Muslims freed them in exchange for in exchange for going to France. Louis spent 4 years in the Holy Land trying to strengthen the Christian forces there. In 1270, he led another crusade against the Muslims. He launched his army at Tunis in northern Africa, but then he died. Meanwhile, in the east, the Muslims continued to gain Christian territory. They captured Antioch in 1268, and finally in 1291, they seized Acre, the last Christian center in Palestine. Concerned about recovering the Holy Land remained strong in the 1300s, but the Ottoman Turks were coming into play here, and they were Muslims, and they were a serious threat to Christian Europe. They had it together. The Crusaders shifted their attention from the recovery of Jerusalem to defending and keeping Europe safe. The Byzantine Empire fell to the Ottomans in 1453, and by 1500, the Muslims were occupying far more territory in Europe than the Christians had had in the East. But the Crusaders did succeed in defending much of Western Europe from the Muslims and in recapturing Spain and Portugal. A couple results of the Crusades before we finish our time here. The Crusaders failed to accomplish their main goals. They didn't recapture the Holy Land, but they could not really keep lasting control in that area. Western Europe and Eastern Europe Christians united to fight Muslims. But the relations between the Christians of Western Europe and the Orthodox of the Eastern Europe became bitter. The Fourth Crusade, during which the Western Crusaders captured and destroyed Constantinople, played a large role in dividing these two groups apart. Some bitterness has continued to this present day. So there's some tension between Western Christianity and Eastern Christianity. But the Crusades also enriched European life. For example, they stimulated economic growth, there was trade. The Italian cities of Venice, Genoa, and Pisa profited because they carried crusaders to the Middle East. These cities gained trading privileges in territories conquered during the Crusades. These cities became rich and powerful, handling trade and Asian goods that passed through the conquered territories on their way to Europe. Western Europeans also learned how to build better ships and make more accurate maps. During the Crusades, they began to use compasses to tell directions, so there was some advances in navigation as well. And last but not least here, there is an interchange of ideas that occurs. So there's interaction between East and West. It kind of helps develop things. But as you can see, the Crusades were really a bit of a mess. And they really threatened the way of life for people who were different. So now that we've taken a look at the reading, use this recording to help you take a look at this assignment and finish the quiz, okay? Good luck.